Good evening. My name is Bahman, and this is Independent Nation Show, the talk show that talks about the process of the engaging to the political process. Today is September 10th, and tonight we have invited a number of candidates from Ward 31, as many as we could find their contact information. Unfortunately, we have two candidates meeting, and I have them to introduce themselves shortly. I asked personally to the office of the incumbent, Janet Davis. Unfortunately, I did not get any answer, and I hope we can manage to have her in the future shows. Let's see, ladies first. Janet.
Thank you. I'm Janet Sherbanowski. I'm a candidate on Ward 31 for Beaches East York.
Welcome. And
thank you first of all for having me on your show.
Oh, you're welcome. Nice.
My name is George Papadakis, and I'm candidate for Ward 31 also.
Okay, both of you are resident of the Ward 31?
Of Ward 31, absolutely.
Okay, let's start with you. Usually our guests in our show, we ask, why politics? Why now? What are your plans? And how did you get started in the first place? That can give some of the audience a little bit of the background that about the reasoning of individuals to get involved with the politics, since everyone has different reasons.
Why politics? I grew up in the military. With my family's a military family, low military, no generals or anything like that. And my father, my grandfathers, my uncles. So I was used to people being in service and being part of their country and serving their country. And during my time, it wasn't acceptable for women to join the military. So I was always very jealous. My brothers both joined the military very young. And
you were craving for going to war or something?
No, for peacekeeping, actually.
Okay.
I view Canada's
Those
place.
old good days of
the
Canada.
The good old days, yes.
Okay.
So it's public service and being part of our nation has always been something that was part of my upbringing. And as I got older, I became more interested in politics, and then worked on a few campaigns, served with Elections Canada and Elections Ontario as the assistant returning officer for this area for 3 elections. So I've worked on campaigns, I've worked on the government side of elections, I've worked in nonprofits, and it was time now to work on actually being a politician.
Is this the first time you're running?
This is the first time I'm running, yes.
George?
Well, this is my first time running also.
Good. We need more people like you.
Let's hope so, that more of us would be elected. I have contributed a lot into non-profit organizations and associations. Never looked for a political office. But looking at the dysfunction of the City Hall the last 4 or 5 years, I decided that we need some change. We need to bring the level of service higher than it is. That level has been dropped substantially lately. I would like to contribute to the community that helped me and my family for the 25 years that I'm here in Canada. And just to close it, why I want to run into politics, I'll close it with a saying of Plato. Plato said that the penalty that you get by not participating in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. That's the reason. That's the reason.
Napoleon Bonaparte say something very similar to that. That the crime of not paying attention or participating, I'm paraphrasing, is more severe than getting involved. Now, you mentioned something about the dysfunctionality of the city at this time. First of all, before I go further, is any one of you is actual member of a certain political party in general?
Yes.
Are you? Yeah, okay. Because in the level of the city, we don't have the ballot with the name of the political party on it, like a provincial level or federal level. Everybody goes as an independent, so to speak. Let me ask you, because you nod when George said there is dysfunctionality in the city, what do you see is wrong right now? The major issues that really affect your community or
I think one of the major issues that I look at for our community is the fact that politicians themselves are giving way more and more to bureaucrats. And therefore the elected officials who are held responsible every 4 years are not necessarily the ones who are running the city. And therefore, like George referred to, we have a great deal of dysfunction because the will of the people is not necessarily what's being done. It's the will of the bureaucrats who perhaps in some cases
Has it been
have
always like that?
it may
Federally,
everywhere.
always?
I believe it is always like that. But it used to be many years ago that when politicians got thrown out of power, bureaucrats also went. You remember those days many years ago,
It was
right?
long
So
ago. Right now,
once-
the politicians come and go. But
absolutely, civil servants stay and bureaucrats stay, and whether the people say they want something changed or not, it doesn't happen because you have staff reports upon staff reports. You have bureaucratic backlogs. You have things that don't get done when the will of the people has said, we want things changed, we want things done. So this for me is a problem.
How do you see the dysfunctionality of the city?
I think most of those people elected have been there for such a long time that they feel that they don't really have to dig and offer to the people new ideas and new projects. They feel secure in their seat. They don't feel threatened that somebody else is going to take it away in a way. They lost their interest with the community, with the people, with the neighborhood. They don't go anymore around the neighborhood asking where the real issues are of the neighborhoods and try to find solutions for them.
So you're in favor of the limitation on the term in office? Or term limit?
That's an idea, yes. Sure, why not?
So
There's
if you get
politicians running.
elected, are you happy to have just one term of the being councillor in your ward?
Well, to do just one term, of course, a lot of things have to change in the structure now that is that the council is built, right?
Okay.
But yeah, why not? 4 years, yeah, they're good enough to contribute, and then maybe somebody else would have some better ideas to bring up on the table and continue.
We have people in the city right now, some of the councillors, at least one or two of them, they are there for more than 20 years. Do you agree with George about term limit?
I believe that we should have term limits, but I also believe that if the people speak, the people speak. So if the people have decided that somebody is worthy to be there for 20 years, this is the people voting.
Okay.
Right?
Let me turn the table a little bit the other way. In the last, in 2010 municipal election, something around close to 800,000 cast their vote out of the 1.5 million and plus. So it tells us about 55% or 53%, something like that, if my math is correct. Don't get me in corner on that. What do you think stops people from voting?
I think that they lost interest, and they do tell me lots of times when I knock on the doors. The last couple of weeks that I started knocking on doors, I see people that they're upset. They turn on me and they say, "I lost interest in you guys. Your guys are all the same." And some of them, they even drop my flyer on the floor.
Oh, of course.
Say, no matter what I vote, things are not going to change. That's why people they don't go voting.
You are a lady, and you are more in the sense of the characteristic. You are nurtured as a woman. How do you approach to these objections?
Objections to voting?
To I lost interest. How can I trust you? I shut the door on you.
Yeah.
I drop the flyer. Or even sometimes, in my case, they swear at me too.
Yeah. having worked on elections from the government side to try and encourage people to vote, it isn't just politicians who receive these messages at the door. It's the actual electoral bodies and the people who are running the elections that receive this as well. So there is a general, and I wouldn't even call it apathy anymore. I think that a few years ago we viewed it as apathy. It doesn't appear to be apathy anymore. I think, as George said, he's correct that people view it as some sort of corruption. People view that doesn't matter who I vote for, nothing is going to change anyhow, and their voice is not being heard no matter who they vote for. So when you start getting that type of disgruntlement with the entire the entire system, then we've got a system breakdown. So it isn't just that we have politicians, perhaps, who people are looking at and say, oh, this is a certain politician who is corrupt, when they view the entire system, that they don't even want to be part of it. That's not apathy anymore. This is not laziness. It's not, I can't be bothered, which there was a
lack of motivation.
There was a lack of, we viewed it as a lack of motivation for a long time, that people were just too lazy, didn't want to go out, so let's encourage them, all these things. But it has turned now to people looking at it with disgust, and people looking and saying, this is an absolute waste of my time. Nothing is going to change. This is where I look at the entire system that we have built up with bureaucracy, that the entire system of government has to be looked at and changed, not just how we are electing our politicians, first past the post or proportional representation. We have to look at all of this and say something's not working.
So please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm gathering that based on your evaluation, we have a so-called morbid political society.
Absolutely.
Okay. As an individual, having said that, I personally ran for the office, not municipally, but federally and provincially, and I can empathize with what both of you say. But as an individual, in the municipal level, as I mentioned earlier, there is no party name on the ballot, so you have more room to maneuver as an individual. How do you think you can convey this message to your constituents? Let's say, George.
Well, first of all, I don't have to follow a party line. I want to listen to the people of my riding, of my ward actually, and see what the real problems are of the neighborhoods in the community. I want to ask their opinion, and from there I can draw my conclusions and try to find solutions for what the community really needs. I'm not a professional politician, and I think that professional politicians do it for a living.
Clear politicians. Yeah.
Clear politicians, right? If you get stuck in your business, we run a business and you get stuck and you don't know what to do, you sit around the table and they're all professionals and they're trying to find a solution, but they cannot find it. So what do? You bring people from outside, try to brainstorm. Some people from outside might have a better idea than you, that you're professional, something that it doesn't click into your mind. I think that the city council needs people outside the political level. People that they grew up inside the community and they live in their areas and they know what the people need, what the business need, and maybe they can bring better results, much better results than the professionals can bring.
George says that a fresh perspective in the municipal or any organization would be much better, which I agree. But municipalities spend millions of dollars bringing outside consultants
always
every single year,
yeah,
for TTC, for the planning, for the water distribution, and so on. Why that doesn't work?
Why bringing consultants in doesn't work?
I mean, when they bring the consultants are usually are not, they don't have any bias toward one group of people or against of the another. Why the recommendation doesn't work? Is it because of that bureaucracy that you mentioned earlier, or because of the political?
Yeah, and I hate to go back to it again. I think that it's because the bureaucracy has built up such degree of silos and their own interest in maintaining their little kingdoms and fiefdoms, that even when they bring in consultants, very highly paid consultants, and they say, oh, the politicians generally bring in the consultants and say, we want to look at this problem, we want to look at this issue, we're paying all this money. There is an inbreeding within the system that says, oh, we've paid for this report, but maybe we won't go with it. And we see this time and time again, that a consultant comes in and says, oh, bad idea, and they go ahead with it anyways. That so I just think that perhaps the political will is not there. I think that looking at the limiting of terms, I think that maybe running for office for one 4-year term, stepping away and then being able to run again would be a good idea.
So it's like a window dressing. They want to just show the public, well, I mean, we are doing that. We bring the consultant, but it doesn't work or something like that.
Yeah, I don't see the desire to change the things at City Hall that need to change.
So let me focus, let's us focus on your ward. I live on Ward 30, not too far from your ward. And of course, every single day I am at your ward just by walking and doing my work, daily work. What issues, each one of you, give me top 3 issues that you have heard from your constituents or as a result of your door knockings and all of that? The top 3 issues that for them is important.
The top of everybody's mind is transit.
Okay.
Right? I consider this an enormously important issue to the entire city. However, I don't think it's the most important issue in my ward, or in my ward.
You have access to the train and
absolutely. Well, we have access. I'm looking at John Tory's proposal for the smart track coming through to Main Station. It will be incredible for the people at Main and Danforth for development on the Danforth. This will bring a lot of ability to do good things for the future.
You are for?
I'm for smart track coming to Main Street. I'm not necessarily for the entire plan, but I'm for that. The other issue, the second issue is the crumbling infrastructure, and we have there's been very little done in the official plans in the areas along the Danforth and in Ward 31 particularly.
For the business or for the residential?
For the business area along Danforth. For the residential, we have infill housing going in. I think that the neighbourhood plans are actually quite appropriate to our area. It is the development of business and development of that avenue that has not been done. Along with that,
yes, Danforth in your ward is dead.
Yes, absolutely. There's business is closing. We also have a big problem with substandard housing, and this is not necessarily the Toronto community housing. This is
just
slumlords, and I'll say it right out: slumlords who are not looking at obeying the bylaws, or who are managing to get around it in some way, and this encompasses all sorts of things.
So it is transit, business,
and housing.
And housing. What do you hear?
Well, I hear about transit a lot, although Ward 31 is not as critical in the transportation. I see 2 areas basically that you have the problem. In Danforth, of course, it's a major artery and people move a lot across it. And the second is the O'Connor Bridge.
Yeah, okay.
That's a problem in the neighborhood, and I hear from the people because I happen to canvass.
How so is the problem?
Well, there is it's the only way. It's the only way to come on this side or go to to the city from this area, from Scarborough and further down, right?
Do you have any solution for that, by the way?
No, if I had the solution, of course, I would try to enforce it, right? But some ideas,
city planners, they should do that.
Oh, well, maybe I can propose some idea later on. What I hear from the people is that there is a lot of speeding in the side streets because of that traffic lights, staying too much.
They just want to get away from the traffic.
Yeah, they stay green on O'Connor for a long time, and the side street, as soon as it turns green, then all of a sudden it starts counting down the numbers to turn, and people try to catch up with the traffic, and they speed a lot into the side streets. Businesses also on O'Connor are complaining about the noise, and the vibration on their houses that they get from the heavy trucks that they pass also. So these are the 2 areas I would say in our ward that transit is problematic. And they need to find some solution.
Both of you mentioned something about business, either in O'Connor regarding of the heavy traffic, or Danforth lack of traffic, so to speak. I mean, what type of the solution? Let me play a little bit of devil advocate. This 27th of October, both of you get elected, which I love to see any one of my guests, all of them get elected, because then I can say, hey, I have connection.
Yes.
For the first time in my life.
There's a little problem here, though. We cannot both get elected. That's for sure. Well, one of the 2, yes.
Let's say assume that that fair land, then both of you or either of you get elected, and by November you are sworn in and you are in the city hall. We have 44 members, of course, and plus the mayor. And let's say you have a solution for any one of these problems. I am not asking you to give me a solution at this time. How do you want to deal with the other? Because it's not the decision of one person.
Right.
You have to go through the committees, you have to go through discussion, through the motions, and then on the floor of the city hall, through the discussion with the other city councillor. And if they don't see you eye to eye, either because of the ideology, political affiliation, or just they don't like you, as simple as that. How do you plan, or how do you think you have ability to communicate with these people? Let's start with you, Jen.
I think that what I've seen, and I've gone through a lot of transcripts from various city meetings and motions and how they get passed before I decided to run. I wanted to know the workings of how our city council actually does run and how they decide on various things. And I think that what I see is that there's a lot of give and take, that you form alliances with this councillor votes for your agreement to do a motion that you've put through. This person seconds it. These people support it because you are supporting other things in their wards. And I think that back to something George said about our council being dysfunctional, I think that that has been one of the biggest difficulties with this particular last 4 years.
How do you want to overcome it?
I think that you personally,
I'm not asking you
okay.
to make a miracle, but
Yes.
but I mean you are there. It is the 1st of November. You are there, and your first item in your file or motion is boost the business alongside of the Danforth between Coxville, let's say, to Woodbine, or to Maine even.
My motion would be to look at something that would benefit everyone, so as not to say all for my ward, all for my people. One of the things that I have looked at is that we could possibly cut down on the use of transit, increase our ability to pay for housing, increase jobs, increase or have less of a burden on our environment by talking to businesses about hiring locally. So I would propose that we look at doing some sort of tax incentive for businesses to hire locally. If somebody lives within 1 kilometer of your business, we will give you some sort of tax rebate on your business tax. Because from what George may be hearing it as well, businesses feel that their taxation is way over what they're making profit-wise. And most of that money goes to pay for housing and transit and environment and jobs. So if we do local, then it helps.
How do you want to deal with the other 43?
Well, I hope those 43 are not going to be the same ones over there, and they're going to start acting a little bit functional, not dysfunctional. Maybe new councillors, that they would have different ideas and try to get things done in a different way. We're going to be operative, and understand the needs of every community. And with alliances, as Janet said, we can all together try to work for the benefit of the community. Our community in Ward 31 and in other communities around the city, of course.
Now, having said that, now I want to focus on your personal solution. Do you have, any one of you, or no, either of you, do you have any vision if everything was hunky-dory and if this dysfunctionality was subsided drastically and come to the level level that you could work with all of the other councillors? Any one of you, do you have any vision about your ward?
Well,
how do you want to look at it 5 years from now?
For sure, much cleaner than it is right now. Walking
you
around
mean physical
Danforth,
cleaning?
Physical cleaning, yes, physical cleaning. Walking around Danforth and O'Connor, where my office is, I see that the city is dirty. I see that garbage are not being picked up at certain times when stores are still open. I see empty stores, lots of empty stores on O'Connor And on Danforth and Coxwell, there's a lots of empty spaces, and that's costly to the owners, and of course to the existing businesses, because if you don't have people coming around your neighborhood, eventually you're not going to have as many business also, especially if you retail, of course. So maybe we should try to give an incentive to businesses to go back, either by giving lower energy cost, because energy cost is a big thing.
Going day by day, practically.
So energy cost would be something that will drive the businesses to stay, not to close or move somewhere else where it's going to be less costly. And of course, try to find programs. I'm not a specialist on that, right? But try to find ways to create new businesses.
You have plenty of bureaucrats. They are specializing. How you envision?
But from my perspective, I think that, again, much like George is talking about, is business. I think business and economic development. This is, in looking at Danforth, it's the main, it's the lifeblood of these avenues. And as of right, we have, under the plan, we have the ability to actually build 5 to 7 stories along Danforth. And again, for some reason, this has not been gone after. We haven't gone after development. We haven't tried to aggregate the owners of the buildings to come together to say, perhaps we can build a condo unit there that will not only bring new stores and a new face, it'll bring new people to our area. It'll relieve some of the pressures on housing stock, because somebody will move into the area who wants to live in that area, who already lives in the area, perhaps as a renter, and work there. The other thing it'll do is, if we promote people living, working, and playing in our areas, it gives the opportunity for the almost 40% of transient population within Ward 31 to encourage them to stay, because we have such a large proportion of the people who move in are moving through, and it doesn't promote community development in the same way as people who are stable and have lived there for many years and intend to live in a community for many years. So when you have this transience, it doesn't give, as George was saying about the dirty streets, there's no incentive. There's no incentive for people to become involved, to volunteer, to keep the streets clean, to work on our schools being better. Just all of it falls apart. So we need people wanting to stay. We need to give them reasons to stay.
I remember when I arrived to Canada, I landed in Toronto, of course, after a short stop in Montreal. I'm talking about 29 years ago. The very first resident I had for a couple of months was on Dawes Road, Hastily Avenue and Dawes Road. And I remember, I vividly remember, when I used to walk down to the Danforth and walk all the way from the main or Dawes Road, go all the way to Pape or further. It was very booming area.
Yes.
And then I left, I went to British Columbia a few years back, and I come back, and then I could see the drastic change. That brings me to the next question. How long have you been in this area?
I was born at East General Hospital. My children were born at East General Hospital. My grandchildren were born at East General Hospital. But
you resided in this area?
I lived in British Columbia for a short time.
But what I'm saying...
Yeah, in Ward 31, absolutely.
Most of your time since you arrived...
I lived my first 18 years in Ward 31. I don't live in Ward 31 right now. But I spent 18 years.
18 years. Now, it brings me to this question. Over the last 30 years that I recall, number of the elections happened, number of the councils came and gone, including the present councillor, Ms. Davis. Have you seen any changes? And if you don't, which I suspect you don't, why is it? It is shortcoming of the councillor, or it is lack of empowerment by a councillor to do something good about this, or anything else for that matter?
I haven't seen, sorry, may I?
Yeah, sure.
I haven't seen anything in our official plans that address our area particularly.
You mean from the city?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for some reason, and whether it's because the infrastructure is so old and there's so much that needs to be done. You know, I mean, the official plans are done the real ones are done every 25 years. So maybe coming up, maybe there's a whole bunch of stuff, good stuff coming up, right? So you're talking 25, 30 years. Within the planning stages, I don't think it has gotten to us, and it needs to. We have our plumbing, our electricity, you know, during
recently the pilot
the
program for the lead water.
Yes.
For
Yeah.
250 houses.
Yeah, but that was
you have
2000, yes.
It was a pilot. It was not
Yeah.
even.
But that was brought up in 2009. I don't understand quite why it became a
Well, they
cause.
just started to do it this year, actually.
Great, it's an election year. Of course you can start things. But we have old infrastructure. We have our telephone systems, our electricity, and everything in the newer suburbs. Everything's buried. So we have all of our wires are corroding. And you know, during the ice storms, some of the areas in Ward 31 were the last to come on.
Last year.
Yes. So these things
And
are
there was a lot of flooding too. In the
flooding. We have
Yes.
so I think that these problems are being addressed in small increments, but we need a massive part of planning to take it
So
over.
who do you put? Not necessarily.
I
I'm
know.
asking.
Yeah.
Do the pointing a finger, but who do you personally, when you are sitting in your own solitude, who do you blame?
I don't think it's
the
a-
whole
yeah.
city is our councillor, or it is public. What is it?
I don't think you can blame anyone because different things are done in
Someone
different
has to
increments.
someone
I
has
think
to
there's
take
a responsibility that's not necessarily a blame. I
Okay.
think that our official plan is coming to a point where we will be getting to making the changes in Ward 31. I truly believe that. And the transit plans that are going on, I think will improve. Right now we've got streetscaping and things going on that perhaps were rushed, I think, in to get things looking pretty for the Pan Am Games. There were some mistakes made in rushing this through and pushing through without proper planning. So we've had water main breaks, we've had, you know, an electricity thing that caused businesses that are already in trouble to have a whole day without power and lose money,
Of
right,
course.
and lose business and
Not
restaurants.
not to
and
mention the issue of the parking.
exactly, yes.
And how about you, George? Do you really see anyone's or any organization's responsibility for this mildly put mild decay of the community?
I think that there is no long-term planning. A city like Toronto, I think is fourth biggest city of North America, we have to have a long-term plan.
Lack of foresight.
Lack of planning, mismanagement, of course, of the council. We should have a transit system much more advanced than most of the U.S. cities, and that had to be discussed, not now, had to be discussed 25, 30 years ago. We reached to the point right now that you cannot do much. You go downtown by Lakeshore and you see the development west of Rogers Center, and you're going to see how many high-rise buildings are being built.
Oh yes, cranes are up in
It's
last 10, 15
crazy.
years. Yeah.
Now, all these people that are going to move into the area, they need to move to go to their work, to go shopping, to go anywhere. Traffic is going to be much worse than it is right now in the area over there. Those things had to be thought much before they start building all these buildings. They had to first think how these people are going to transit. They're going to move themselves around, and then go ahead and give all these licenses for permits actually for building all these houses. Even in outside downtown, what I hear, when the amalgamation happened, there was supposed to be 4 downtown centers. Actually 4 centers, not 4 downtown centers, but 4 centers. They tried to move the downtown people to move into the outside of the to the suburbs. Have a Scarborough town center, have another area, you know, where businesses can grow, move certain businesses, like lawyers, for example, in that area, go to North York and build something, attract actually businesses to move into the area to get away from the downtown. And of course, think of when you are adding, let's say, 20,000 people in a neighborhood, those 20 people have to move. Do you have a plan to widen the road, add extra lanes for those people to move, or do you have another way, or there a subway or a truck system or whatever system, you know, to get those people comfortable to their jobs?
Well,
so that's what I'm saying. There is no real long-term planning.
Well, some argue that city licensing and functionality of the organization like OMB is always in contrast with each other. Not always, but in large number of that in recent years. So the license is not being issued because of the reasons that you mentioned. There is not plan for the mobility. There is a view that mobility could create congestion in the traffic or so on. But the developer gets rejection and just go to OMB, which is provincially founded, of course, or organized, and turnover, and they start digging the ground. Now, how do you see? Do you let me put it this way? Do you see that we should dismantle OMB or something like OMB to be there to address some of this issue, or do we have to amalgamate the part of the licensing for the permission or permitting department of the city to work with the OMB beforehand? Because the way that both of you describe, right hand doesn't know what the left hand does.
I think that what has happened, if I may,
Yes.
is you're talking about the City of Toronto removing itself from the OMB and being allowed to do without OMB?
Not necessarily removing. It cannot do anything, because if the city says to the developer, I am not giving you this permit to developer, go and put an appeal in front of the OMB, and OMB, if they know the people, if they are working with them or whatever, they give the license back to him, and then they have more jurisdiction.
I think that there's more planning than that goes on in it, and I truly believe that there's too many silos, and the right hand is not talking to the left hand very well, whether that's federal, provincial, or municipal, or within the municipality, within the very ministries, within the various departments federally. We've got all these layers of bureaucrats that are not necessarily communicating very well with each other. And unless we bring everybody together and say, here's the interests of the people, and we can in some way look and say, here's the plan. How are people going to live? And just as George said, you know, building buildings without a way for people to move around is not a good idea. However, I think that what was discovered by the provincial government when they moved in the allowance for where we can build and wanted more densification within the city, it's to mirror other cities with the density. We have a large city, and the density was very small. I mean, still the least dense city amongst all the world cities. And so we have not reached any sort of critical mass where we can't move around. We're not comfortable moving around in it anymore, but in other cities people have the transit. They planned, as you said, 25 years ago that, gee, maybe the city's going to grow to 3 million. For some reason, we looked at our suburbs as being where everything was going to grow. It didn't. That isn't what's happened. The densification has come within the city. So we have crumbling infrastructure that has not been repaired in the cities. We have densification, plus we have growth from the outskirts that are coming in. So this is why transit is being discussed so much. But from the OMB perspective, the OMB has a mandate from the provincial government and from how they've studied all of Ontario to put densification into Toronto, because this is supposed to be a major service hub. We have 200,000, I think, jobs within the City of Toronto that are created through service industries, through insurance and banking and everything. These are important job creators. So if you have all these jobs here, but the OMB has to look at what the province is doing for the entire province. And look at what's best for the entire province, not just for the City of Toronto. This is where, again, we're having...
Well, some could argue, or not could, they do, that by doing that, you're isolating certain or disfranchising certain part of the communities and ghettoizing it in the different, or moving them or pushing them back because you want to have the city goes up. Let me that was not question. I just said some people argue against this, what you said. You mentioned about both of you about the transit. I just want to. You mentioned that you are for the plan that was introduced by John Tory. Which plan are you in favor of?
I would prefer
transit. I'm talking.
I would prefer the subway system. But like I said,
which one? There are many of them. Chow is giving a map, Ford giving a map, Sarah Thompson comes out of everybody getting someone getting in the drawing board and put a couple lines and say, hey, it is the plan. But the actual problem is they're getting the money and do the job.
Okay. Well, as I said, I don't endorse any political party.
No, I'm talking
but
about
the idea. The idea of getting subway to move the people around, it's better for me because it's faster, more convenient, and it doesn't obstruct businesses and pedestrians. Like what happened in St. Clair with
I had my office there. I know what's happened.
The neighborhood and the people, the businesses, they never liked it. They lost. Lots of them.
Yes. Many of them moved. Yeah.
Many of them moved. Yes. So I think that the subway system is better. Now, specifically, I would say that, of course, the Shepherd line has to continue to go all the way to Kennedy. And
you mean to Scarborough Town?
Scarborough Town, sorry, yeah. And an Eglinton line, that would be a big, big relief. Of course, other sections can be upgraded into the existing system.
Airport?
The airport, they already doing the GO train, right?
Metrolinx is doing
the
that,
Metrolinx,
and
yes.
they want the arm and leg for the fee.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, the airport has to have a subway service for sure.
It's very interesting. You said the subway Shepherd line. Again, I go back to my history when I was young lad when I arrived here, and I remember after first year that I could understand basic English. I remember they were talking about the subway between Shepherd to the Scarborough Town Centre, and it was on the table for years and years and years, and finally they started it, and then they stopped it at Fairview Mall. So again, this is the question that I asked you from previous guest. 30 years, 44 councillors more or less in different eras sitting there having the same issue, same city map, and still they cannot come to the consensus that which way we want to go to. Is it the human element, which is bringing me back to my previous question 10 minutes ago? How do you want to deal with that? I mean, all of the idea is fine, but how as a human element you want to deal with them?
You have to try to convince the other people that
it's
our benefit. Well, for the discussion, of course. What other reason, I mean, what other way you have to convince somebody to understand that there is a real need for that? As councillors, we should understand what it needs to be done for the good of the city, for the good of the people, and of course go ahead and find the specialists, to find a way how to do it. I don't really understand how we ended up in that situation. Maybe personal gain from certain people, but yeah, I think the discussion is the only way of convincing people, to understand what is good for the city and go ahead and implement it.
I think that we're past conversation. I think that
I had a guest here that suggested even guns.
Of conversation. I think that we need a referendum. Maybe not with this election; it's too late. But we actually need some sort of decision by the people that says we are going to do this, and
this is 1, 2, 3 ABC
exactly,
plan.
and
just to give us everybody voted.
Not necessarily during an election where there's so much passion and so much perhaps animosity and all of this going on, and the publicity and everything, but just a very simple question. Will you spend the money? Because that's the question, isn't it? Will the people who are paying the taxes spend the money to make the transit for the future? That's the question.
We are getting to close to we have about 10 minutes to the end of the program, and I want to get a little bit wrap whatever you said during last 15 minutes or so, and I want to move it to a little bit of the human perspective. Instead of asking you what you're going to do or how you want to do that, because all three of us, I assume, we are considered to be mature people, and so we have our own experiences. Based on your experiences, having said all of these common sense available on the table, what has stopped these people in the city hall in last, let's say, 20 years to come to the consensus? They are human too. They have all of they didn't go there just get $105,000 salary. I mean no, they had that and their own ideals. When like you are here for the first time, so you are here for a reason. Yeah. They went there for that reason. What has happened? I just want the human element. I'm not asking for facts.
Yeah, as I said, going through a lot of the council meetings and motions and studies and all of these things, what I see is that there have been a lot of accomplishments in the city.
Of course.
There have been so many great things that have been accomplished over the 25 years. Yeah. The big issue is that people, it's like any discipline of any child or anything. You don't want to make that decision that is going to make them dislike you. And politics, people try to get elected by people by making them like you and by sugarcoating things and by giving things away and by not taking things away from people. Because when you take things away, whether that's taxes or housing for expropriation or anything, people don't like it, and then your people who are against you will use it against you. So the political will, I think there is actually a great deal of political will to make these large changes. And what we see happening is and I'm probably too old to be classified in this way, is that people who have come into politics in a younger age are moving into the more mature federal and political and provincial politics, and they've come from municipalities, and hopefully they will be able to make these decisions that help to impact the financing on the municipal level. And I think that that's a good thing. I think that those people who have cut their teeth in the municipalities will then go on to provincial and federal and bring it back down to us and help to make those big decisions. I think it's a maturity. We are still a very young country, even if we say 25, 30 years. And I think that
look at Greece.
Yes, 3,000 years. So
Greece.
Yeah, I think that's a maturity.
How do you see what has happened? What is the obstacle? What is the main obstacle? Is it ego? It is just as Janet said, maybe sometimes they act like babies. They can't.
I think that most of the councillors are holding that seat just for the seat and the money, the $105,000 that you said.
And the perks.
There are professionals, of course, if there's perks behind it. There are professional politicians, and if they lose their job, they're going to have to go to the real world, and they don't want that. And we have to admit it that today you're getting elected if there is money behind you. If you have money to expose yourself to the media and have a few people to say a few nice words about you and write the good things about you on your website, eventually you're going to get elected, right? So these people who become professionals, they don't really look what the city needs, what the people need, and they just sit over there, and one day they want to do this, and the next day they want to do that, and then they change their opinion. So we need new people, new young people and new councillors that they want really to work and bring innovation, bring change into what exists right now.
And that is a good segue to my probably final question, because before I ask you to just give our audience your closing statement, and that segue is you said website and the money and all of that. Based on my own personal experience, I always business-wise or the political, you have to walk your way back. Final result is to get elected. To get elected, you need votes. For votes, you need exposure. For exposure, you need money. And for money, because based on the rules and regulation, you need donations. How are you doing in that field?
Oh, okay, wait for me. This is my opportunity to say, give me money, please give me money.
Well, I know,
of course.
No, I'm saying, how long, by the way, how long are you campaigning?
From July 3rd.
How long are you campaigning?
August 21st.
Oh, so you're just started. Now, you started from July. Have you had any luck to get some sort of the benefactors? So
From donations?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How about you?
Yes, I did get some. Not enough, of
But
course, to
not
finish
enough.
the campaign.
Not enough.
Still early anyways, right?
By the way, your maximum expenditure is what?
Around 32,000.
32,000.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
How many voters do you have over there?
Around 32,000.
How come your ward has a different number of the eligible voters than the provincial ridings?
Yeah. It's a little bit different. Provincially, it's a double.
It's
Oh yes,
because
because
Right,
of the
so
44.
we
That's
have
correct.
about
That's correct.
54,000 people.
It is
Yeah.
about 70,000 or 67,000. The minus divided by 2
Yeah.
is about 32. You
Yeah.
get 85 cents.
75.
85 cents
85
per
plus
voter.
$5,000 at original. Okay. Now, do you have 30,000 now?
Oh, I'll be very happy if I had this amount.
Okay, so we are getting close to the end of. First of all, I want to thank both of you, accepting our invitation first, being there here on time, and bring your perspective. And since you both are first-time candidates, I am very happy because I like to see more first-timers. I want to get people more involved. This is the camera. I give you 30 to 45 seconds if you want to have a message to your audience, which later on, because we put it on YouTube in a few days, and then they can look at it and say, hey, this is Janet, this is George, it is what he said to me or she said to me about that. Ladies first again.
Thank you. All I can say is that from municipal politics point of view, I think it is where the politician actually meets with the electors. And while I love the big ideas of federal and maybe not so big of provincial, the municipal politics is dealing with each individual, and it hits you when you're home. So it may seem that sewers and streetlights and parking and businesses being successful are not as glamorous as perhaps as international trade and the wars going on elsewhere. This is where we live, and this is what develops everything else in our community. I think our democracy and our charter protect all of our equal rights and should. And please vote, whether it's for me or George or anyone else. Just please vote.
George?
Well, all I have to say is I would listen to the people. That's what I'm doing for the last 2 weeks that I went out knocking on doors. I want to listen what the problem is, what the issues are per neighborhood. I want to hear what they have to suggest, not myself only. And I will try to put everything together and try to find solutions for what the city in general and Ward 31 needs to be done. As Janet said, yes, please go and vote. Vote, no matter who you're going to vote. Eventually somebody's going to get elected, and I hope it's me, of course.
Thank you for both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us tonight. And as always, my last message is, please participate, become a volunteer, vote, or even become a candidate. Good night.
For me, an introduction to the world of school trustees and all of them an introduction to the world of school trustees and all that that entails.